He found a starving Apache child. 4 days later, 3 Apache women stood at his door. It was the sharp cry of a child that shattered the silence of the desert morning. Samuel Parker froze mid-stride, his boots sinking into the dust as he scanned the empty plain. The sound came again, weak, desperate. He knew that cry wasn't meant to be heard. It was a last effort from someone fading away. And he couldn't ignore it. Samuel lived alone on a modest homestead near the foothills of the New Mexico Territory. The Civil War had taken his wife, his hope, and the laughter that once filled his home. He had moved west to disappear from the world, to silence the ache inside his heart. But now, that cry forced his tired soul awake. He dropped his bundle of firewood and hurried toward the sound, pushing through mesquite and brittle brush. That's when he saw him. A little boy, no more than 5 or 6, lying curled beside a rock. The child's frame was thin as a reed, lips cracked, skin tight like paper over bone. Dark braids stuck to his face, and his small chest rose just barely. Hey now, Samuel whispered, kneeling beside him. The boy's eyes fluttered open, fearful, but too exhausted to flee. Samuel reached into his canteen and trickled a few drops into the child's mouth. The boy coughed, then swallowed as though each drop meant life itself. Samuel knew immediately who the child was, Apache. The very people white settlers feared, and sometimes hated. He also knew that helping him could bring trouble. Apache families did not abandon their own willingly. If this boy had been left behind, something terrible had happened. But there are moments in life when a man makes a choice that shapes who he truly is. You're safe, he murmured. Let's get you home. He lifted the child into his arms. The boy was feather light. As Samuel walked back, the child tried to speak, but the words came out as faint whispers in a language Samuel didn't understand. He pressed a hand gently over the boy's heart, promising with his silence that whatever the child feared, he would protect him. Back at the cabin, Samuel warmed broth and spooned it slowly between the boy's lips. All afternoon, he sat by his bedside, cooling his fevered head, trying to offer comfort without knowing a single word the child spoke. As night came, Samuel sat in his rocking chair, staring at his old rifle above the fireplace. He couldn't ignore the weight of the situation. The Apache were protective and proud. If they discovered their child inside a white settler's home, there could be consequences. He considered leaving the boy outside near the hills, where someone might find him, washing his hands of the risk. But then the child stirred, reaching blindly until his fingers found Samuel's arm. He clung tightly, like someone who had already lost too much. Samuel stayed. By the second day, the boy's strength returned enough for him to sit up. He pointed to himself and said his name, soft but clear, Taji. Samuel smiled for the first time in months. Taji, he repeated, patting his chest, Sam. The boy didn't speak much, but he watched the world with big, intelligent eyes. He seemed fascinated by the whittled wooden horse on Samuel's shelf. Samuel handed it to him, and the boy cradled it like a precious treasure. Throughout the next days, Samuel wrestled with dilemmas. Should he try to find his family? What if his presence invited danger? But every time he thought of sending Taji away, he saw flashes of another small face, his daughter, Emma, lost to fever years ago. He hadn't been able to save her. The memory still haunted him. This time, he could save someone. 4 days after finding the boy, Samuel stepped outside to gather water, only to freeze in place. 3 Apache women stood at the edge of his property. They didn't advance. They didn't speak. But their eyes, dark, sharp, and grieving, told him everything. The tallest woman stepped forward, speaking words Samuel didn't understand. Her voice trembled. She held out a small piece of cloth, a child's shirt, torn and stained. Samuel recognized the fabric. It matched the pants Taji wore. The boy heard the voices and rushed outside. The moment he saw them, he cried out, a joyful sound that pierced the air as he ran toward them. The women caught him, dropping to their knees, sobbing into his braids, holding him as though they'd finally been given back their hearts. Samuel stood completely still, knowing this was the right ending, yet feeling an unexpected stab of loneliness. He thought he should go back inside quietly, slip back into the solitude he'd grown used to. But the tall woman approached him. She placed her hand over her heart, tears streaking her cheeks, and spoke again. Though he didn't know the words, the meaning was unmistakable. Thank you. Another woman stepped forward, holding a beautifully beaded pouch. She extended it to Samuel in offering. But before he could reach for it, Taji pulled away from his relatives and ran back to Samuel, hugging him tightly around the waist. The women watched, eyes softening with understanding. Samuel knelt, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You go on now," he said, voice thick. "Your family needs you." Taji didn't understand the English, but he understood enough. He stared up with pleading eyes, eyes that asked him not to disappear from his life. The tallest woman spoke to Samuel more gently this time. She pointed to the mountains, then motioned to herself, then to him, as though inviting him to follow. Samuel hesitated. Trust between their worlds was fragile, delicate as glass. But then the woman's expression changed. She was no longer speaking for a tribe. She was speaking as a mother. And Samuel, seeing that, understood something deeper. Fear builds walls. Gratitude tears them down. So he nodded. The women smiled, not with politeness, but with true warmth. They turned, guiding Taji between them, and walked with slow steps so Samuel could follow. They led him to a camp hidden in the brush, smoke rising gently from fire pits, families tending to daily work, children that paused to stare with open curiosity. He was the outsider here, the invader, and yet, no one reached for a weapon. No one shouted. The women spoke to their people, pointing back toward Samuel's homestead. They told the story of a stranger who had saved one of their own. Soon, elders approached, faces like weathered leather, eyes filled with wisdom. They spoke in low tones and nodded with solemn respect. One by one, villagers approached to greet the child they believed lost forever. Taji clung to Samuel's arm each time, as if refusing to forget what had been given to him. By evening, they invited Samuel to share food, simple bread and roasted meat. He felt humbled being welcomed to their fire. When it came time to leave, Taji grabbed Samuel's hand. The tall woman smiled and spoke softly, "Taji, brother." Then she pointed to Samuel's chest. Family. He didn't know how, but he understood. From this day on, there would be no more borders between them, not the kind that truly matter. Samuel returned home under a sky burning with stars. He looked at his quiet cabin, once a symbol of his loneliness, and for the first time, he felt peace instead of emptiness. His kindness had not only saved a child, it had saved him too. Weeks passed, and the Apache visited often. Samuel would teach Taji simple English words, and Taji would teach Samuel Apache gestures and stories. A friendship formed between the two families, built not on treaties or politics, but on humanity. Samuel learned that Taji's father had died hunting, and the boy had been separated in a storm. They had feared the worst. But hope, though thin, had guided them to Samuel's door. One evening, as the sun faded behind the ridge, Taji placed the wooden horse back in Samuel's hand and said in clear English, "You helped me live." Samuel felt his heart break open in the best way possible. The child he saved had given him back the will to live too. In a world divided by fear and misunderstanding, one act of compassion became a bridge, reminding everyone that love doesn't ask what language you speak or where you come from. It simply sees someone in need, and reaches out. That is how a starving Apache child found hope in the arms of a lonely man. And how, 4 days later, 3 grateful Apache women stood at his door. Not to take something back, but to offer family.